You may be asking what you can do about this issue. As with any issue, this question is difficult. People become informed about an emergency but have no idea how to solve it, especially as an individual. I'll talk about 6 important things you can do for the moment in detail, and then summarize them at the end. The best thing you can do as an individual is to become vegetarian or vegan. From personal experience, I would recommend that you go vegetarian first. Vegetarians just don't eat meat, whereas vegans don't eat meat or animal products like milk and eggs. People live busy lives, and because a person's eating habits are so personal, they're difficult to change. People I've seen try to go vegan first are enthusiastic for a couple of days and then fail. This sort of short sightedness, of course, happens with all changes, but that's not the point. It's important for the sake of consistency to not have to check for every unethical ingredient in food at first. For example, once you start paying attention, you'll notice that dairy is in more things than you think. It's better to make a few changes now rather than become so overwhelmed that you simply cop out and do nothing. Afterwards, one can become a vegan and then take steps to avoid ingredients such as retin, which comes from the stomach of a slaughtered baby cow, gelatin, which comes from crushed pig bones, isinglass, which comes from fish's swim bladders, food coloring, which comes from raising and crushing up beetles. For those who want to change things all the way, I understand your frustration. The entire change is important, and in the end, half a change isn't going to be enough. When trying to solve the problem, there are so many bad faith questions, arguments, ridicule, excuses, and a general lack of common sense. I understand that it's frustrating to hear the rhetoric of, oh, the problem won't be solved in my lifetime, it's just too bad, what a shame, the future is going to be so wonderful. And my goal is not to tell people to slow down or to romanticize half measures, but simply to demonstrate that many people, even partially changing their habits, can accumulate into something significant. For example, even becoming a pescatarian a um, is still a massive step in fighting against our mistreatment of other animals. Pescatarians are people who are mostly vegetarian but still eat fish. You don't know if your efforts will succeed or if other people will switch their diets, but no one who starts something like this does. If you continue to buy meat and animal products, you create a demand and the animals will continue to be killed and exploited. Luckily for this issue, even your efforts individually will make some difference. Skipping eating meat for a day, a week, a month, or a year adds up to hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of meat not being sold, which causes the industry to produce less of it next year. Remember that the reason why factory farming is so horrible is because they're trying to keep up with consumer demand. In a world where so many people eat meat, many people not eating meat will draw attention, and we need a lot of people to do this in order to put pressure on the system. Governments don't act like something is an emergency until we do. Something that is much easier to do than becoming vegan is to quit buying products made out of wool or animal leather. This actually isn't that hard because animal leather is more expensive and tends to crack and peel, whereas leather that comes from plants is cheaper and doesn't peel. We mistakenly call these real and artificial leather, but these labels are misleading. Plant leather is merely another product made out of a good material. Wool can be easily replaced by cotton or polyester. As you saw earlier, the wool industry is directly tied to factory farming for goats and sheep. I mean earlier in the playlist if you're watching the short video format. Earlier in the video if you're watching the long video format. I didn't go into detail about the production of animal leather or the pollution it causes, but animal leather comes from removing the skin off of an animal. Not just cows, but animals like crocodiles or snakes or dogs in other countries if you want to import cheap leather here. You don't have to throw all of your wool or leather clothing out overnight, but you can simply make a small effort to quit buying these items in the future. If you're ready to take the next step, but you don't want to waste clothing, you can donate your clothes to shelters, thrift shops, or to people who are poor and desperately need them. I say these things are worth the effort because you can get involved in something interesting and you can finally take actions about the issues that affect you, such as corporate greed or ecological destruction. These actions are small enough to achieve even if you live a busy life. And this wouldn't just help you and the animals, but also workers and the environment. The next thing which is important is awareness and informing others. If you've watched this full video or playlist, you now know what happens on factory farms. A lot of people even being aware of what goes on is important. You may not have known how exploitative the wool industry is and thought that it was just a haircut for animals. You can help by sharing this video on social media. I tried to make it as informative as possible. You can also have conversations with your friends and coworkers. I don't advocate preaching or being a general nuisance to the community, but if it comes up during conversations, you could say, "Did you know how fucked up the wool industry is?" Or, "8 chickens on average are put inside of 14-inch cages in factory farms." Some other options I've read you can do during my research is to ask supermarkets to sell more vegan items and request for restaurants to take veal off of their menus. More importantly, though, support legislation that protects downed animals and abolishes battery cages, force feeding, veal crates, and intensive confinement for animals. We need to show support for our vegan mayors and senators like Eric Adams or Cory Booker. They may have the appearance of being establishment politicians, depending on where you stand on the political spectrum, and in other respects, they very well might be. But advocating for animal rights while trying to survive the political games of the House and the Senate and the House of Representatives is difficult, especially when mentioning any desire to help animals will automatically bring out vehement prejudice and outrage from the whole population who will try to ruin your political career. Though veganism and vegetarianism are no longer quite rare, Eric Adams is still the first self identified vegan mayor of New York. Although he's occasionally admitted to eating fish, which makes him pescatarian, I think. If you don't eat meat or animal products but eat fish, is that pescatarians when pescatarians are vegetarian, not vegan? Cory Booker has tried to pass legislation helping animals, and he takes his work as representative very seriously. I also know for a fact that he's a vegan, and I've never heard anything about him eating fish. Anyways, we need to provide support for any legislation trying to pass, and also show support for our few vegan mayors or animal rights government officials. So, in summary, 6 important things you can do: go vegetarian or vegan, replace your wool and leather clothing, raise awareness and inform others, ask for more vegan options at supermarkets, ask restaurants to take veal off of their menus, and support important legislation. Anyways, I hope this playlist helped open your eyes about how horribly animals are treated nowadays and informed you about factory farming. Have a good day, everybody.